Chapter 1: Bandit Attacks. Malakar was a notorious bandit leader who had been causing chaos in the neighboring settlements for years. His motivations were simple. He was driven by greed and a desire for power. He saw attacking and pillaging these settlements as an easy way to gain wealth and assert his dominance. Ricky's village was one of Malakar's targets. It was a small and peaceful village, nestled in the rolling hills, with hardworking and honest people. The village had no army or defenses to speak of, and they were easy prey for Malakar and his band of ruthless thugs. On a fateful day, Malakar and his band of thieves descended upon the village like a pack of hungry wolves. They attacked the village with brutal force, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. They looted and burned everything in sight, and anyone who dared to resist them was either killed or taken as a prisoner. Ricky, a young and brave lad, was one of the few who managed to escape the onslaught. He watched in horror as his home and everything he had known and loved was destroyed. He knew he had to flee for his life and find a way to stop Malakar and his gang from continuing their reign of terror. As Ricky ran for his life, he could hear the screams and cries of his fellow villagers being silenced one by one. He swore to himself that he would make Malakar pay for what he had done and bring justice to his people. Little did he know, his quest for justice would lead him down a path filled with danger, adventure, and unexpected allies. Chapter 2: Escape to the Forest. Ricky ran as fast as he could, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been so scared in his life. He didn't know how long he ran, but he eventually found himself deep in the forest, far away from Malakar's grasp. As night began to fall, Ricky realized he needed to find a safe place to rest. He searched for shelter but found nothing suitable. He had to resort to sleeping under a tree, with only his cloak to protect him from the elements. The next morning, Ricky woke up with a growling stomach. He needed to find food, but he didn't know where to start. He walked for hours, searching for berries or fruit trees. He was lucky to come across a small stream where he could quench his thirst and even catch a few fish for breakfast. Days turned into weeks, and Ricky had to learn how to survive in the wild. He became skilled at setting traps and foraging for food. However, he was not alone in the forest. Malakar's men were still searching for him, and Ricky had to be careful to avoid them. One day, Ricky was spotted by one of Malakar's scouts. He ran as fast as he could, his heart racing. He could hear the shouts of the scout and his men chasing him. Ricky dodged trees and jumped over logs, but he couldn't shake off his pursuers. Just when it seemed like Ricky would be caught, he stumbled upon a hidden cave. It was dark and damp, but it was the only safe haven he could find. He sat there, panting and sweating, as he listened to the sounds of Malakar's men searching for him outside. He knew he had to come up with a plan if he wanted to survive and seek revenge. Chapter 3: Meeting the Elf. Ricky was hiding in the cave, still thinking of a plan to take revenge on Malakar, when he heard a rustling noise outside. He quickly grabbed his sword, ready to defend himself, but to his surprise, it was not one of Malakar's men. Instead, a young elf named Arin stepped out of the bushes. Arin was a beautiful elf maiden with long, flowing hair the color of autumn leaves and deep green eyes that sparkled like emeralds. Ricky was taken aback by her beauty and grace, but he quickly regained his composure and greeted her. Arin explained that she too had been hiding in the forest, trying to avoid Malakar's men. She had been traveling through the forest on her way to her home village when she had heard the news of Malakar's attack on Ricky's village. She had been watching Ricky from a distance for a few days, intrigued by his survival skills and determination. Ricky and Arin soon realized that they had a common enemy, and they decided to join forces. Arin had knowledge of the forest, and her elven skills made her an excellent tracker. Ricky, on the other hand, had a fierce determination to take down Malakar and his men. As they spent more time together, Ricky discovered that Arin was not only beautiful but also intelligent and resourceful. Her knowledge of the forest and its inhabitants was unparalleled, and she was able to teach Ricky how to move quietly and avoid detection. Ricky and Arin's partnership quickly turned into a friendship as they worked together to survive in the forest and plan their revenge against Malakar. With Arin's knowledge and Ricky's determination, they were confident that they could take down Malakar and bring peace back to the land. Chapter 4: The Wounded Dwarf. Ricky and Arin were making their way through the forest when they heard the sound of battle in the distance. They decided to investigate, and as they got closer, they saw that a squad of gnomes sent by the king to fight Malakar's bandits had engaged in a fierce battle with them. As they approached the battlefield, they saw a lone dwarf stuck in a ground trap and badly wounded. Without any delay, Ricky and Arin got down to business to help the dwarf. Together, they started treating his wounds so that the dwarf would recover as soon as possible. The dwarf's name was Gorm, and he had been fighting alongside the gnomes when he was injured. Gorm was grateful to Ricky and Arin for saving his life, and he joined them on their journey. As they traveled together, Gorm shared his story with Ricky and Arin. He was a skilled blacksmith from the dwarven city of Forcia, and he had joined the king's army to fight against Malakar's bandits. However, his unit had been ambushed, and he was the only survivor. Gorm was determined to seek revenge against Malakar and his bandits, and he knew that Ricky and Arin shared the same goal. The trio continued on their journey, with Gorm providing his skills as a blacksmith to help them on their quest. As they made their way through the forest, they encountered several obstacles, including traps set by Malakar's men and treacherous terrain. However, with Gorm's knowledge of metalworking and Arin's knowledge of the forest, they were able to overcome these challenges. As they got closer to Malakar's stronghold, they knew that the real battle was about to begin. But with each other's support, they were ready to face Chapter 5, The Final Confrontation. Ricky, Arin, and Gorm had finally reached the outskirts of Malakar's stronghold. They could see the thick walls and towers of the fortress looming ahead of them. They knew that their final confrontation with Malakar was at hand. They spent the night planning their attack. Gorm used his knowledge to fashion weapons and armor from scrap metal they had collected along the way. Arin scouted the area, mapping out the layout of the fortress and identifying weak points in the walls and defenses. Ricky, on the other hand, focused on strategy. He knew that they couldn't take on Malakar's entire army head-on, so they needed to find a way to infiltrate the fortress and strike at Malakar directly. As they made their way towards the fortress the next day, they encountered a group of Malakar's men. The three companions fought bravely, using their skills and weapons to overcome the bandits. They were able to take down the enemy without raising the alarm, and they quickly moved on towards the fortress. Using Arin's knowledge of the area, they were able to slip past the guards and scale the walls of the fortress. They made their way through the shadows, avoiding detection and taking out guards silently along the way. Finally, they reached the inner chambers of the fortress. There, they found Malakar, surrounded by his most trusted lieutenants. Ricky stepped forward, drawing his sword. He challenged Malakar to a one-on-one fight, where the winner would gain control not only of the fortress, but also of the fate of the surrounding lands. Malakar laughed, dismissing Ricky as a mere boy. But Ricky was determined, and he fought with all his might, feeling the weight of responsibility for the inevitable fate of the surrounding lands. His eyes gleamed with fury, and his movements were precise and confident, as if he had fought in arenas for years. The inevitability of the battle could be felt in every muscle contraction, every piercing sound, and every breath. Arin and Gorm joined the fray, taking on Malakar's lieutenants and holding them back. The battle was fierce, but eventually, Ricky emerged victorious. He stood over Malakar, his sword at the defeated bandite's throat. Malakar begged for mercy, promising to leave the land and never return. Ricky spared Malakar's life but banished him from the land, never to return. With Malakar defeated, peace returned to the land, and the people rejoiced. Ricky, Arin, and Gorm became legends, their bravery and skill inspiring generations to come. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, proving that even the smallest of heroes can change the course of history.